There are cases that teach you more than any medical textbook ever could. Cases that leave an invisible scar right where you thought your mind was the coldest. This was one of them. This story has been told me on different centers over the years. And every time I step into the operating room, I still ask myself if what I saw that night was a medical anomaly or something that should never have happened at all. It was a Friday night shift. One of those that start off slow, too calm, and end up reminding you why you should never say, "It's quiet tonight." I was going over some charts when a nurse came rushing in, pale-faced and shaking. "Doctor, you need to see this." "What's going on?" "A boy in the trauma bay. He was hit by a car, but he's not bleeding. At first I didn't think much of it. Maybe hypovolemic shock, maybe the bleeding was internal. But when I entered the room, what I saw stopped me cold. The boy was about 8 years old. He'd fallen off a bicycle and had multiple deep wounds, but not a single drop of blood was coming out of them. Nothing. Just open skin and exposed muscle, like an anatomical model, without the faintest sign of life flowing through it. "Did you get an IV in?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "We tried, doctor, but the veins, they won't fill." I checked his pulse. Nothing. Then I looked at the monitor. Heart rate, 78. Blood pressure, 110/70. Everything normal, but clinically, that child had no palpable pulse. Maybe the monitor was malfunctioning? "Prepare O-negative blood," I ordered. "Now." The nurse brought the bag and connected it. The red liquid began to run through the tube until it stopped, as if it had hit an invisible wall inside the vein. Then the bag began to swell back up, and the blood reversed, bubbling back into the line. We disconnected it immediately. The room went silent. The boy opened his eyes and looked right at me. "Will it hurt again, doctor?" he asked softly. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Hurt what, champ?" "When I die?" A chill ran straight down my spine. "You're not going to die, okay? Just stay calm." He lowered his gaze. "Yes, I will," he said quietly. "I already died once. I ordered an emergency CT scan. While we were moving him, I noticed something strange. His skin was ice cold, but it didn't have the bluish tone of hypoxia. It was as if life was there, but the body didn't know what to do with it. The scan was even more disturbing. There was no trace of blood in his major arteries, empty vessels as if someone had drained his body completely, and yet his heart was still beating. The radiologist, an old veteran who'd seen it all, looked at me pale as paper. "This makes no sense," he whispered. "Not physiologically, not technically, it just doesn't." I decided to review the accident report. According to the paramedics, they had found the boy lying by the side of a rural road, right by a sharp curve where trucks often hit the brakes hard. He was conscious when they found him, though barely speaking. Multiple open wounds, fractures, signs of severe abdominal trauma. But what had shocked them most was that he didn't bleed. "Not a drop, Doc," one of the paramedics told me. A seasoned guy, the kind who'd seen everything. "We used gauze, dressings, pressure, nothing. The wounds just stayed dry, like they were empty." "Was he breathing?" "Yes, slow but steady. Pupils reactive, reflexes present. But—" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "When we loaded him into the ambulance, I swear he lost his pulse." "And you kept trying to resuscitate him?" "Of course." Then he opened his eyes, looked at each of us, and said— He paused. He said, "It won't work." That phrase echoed in my head as I went through the report. The boy had been admitted with no ID, only a name, given by the supposed grandmother, Samuel. I asked if there were any family members. Only that elderly woman, disoriented, saying she was his grandmother. I asked to have her brought in. I found her sitting in the hallway, on one of those metal chairs that are never comfortable for anyone. She had a rosary in her hands, lips moving without sound, eyes fixed on a single spot on the floor. Her skin was wrinkled, tanned by years under the sun, and her clothes smelled faintly of wood smoke. "Are you the boy's grandmother?" I asked. She nodded without looking up. Her fingers moved quickly over the beads of the rosary. "What can you tell me about him? Any illness, any condition?" She sighed, her voice trembling. "It's not an illness, doctor. It's a punishment." I waited for her to continue, but she didn't nod right away. She just stared at the floor, clutching the rosary until her knuckles turned white. A punishment for what? I finally asked. The woman lifted her gaze to mine. Her eyes were glassy, like someone who had cried so much she had nothing left. His mother lost him, she said softly. She died during childbirth. It was quick. No one could save her. Her voice cracked. But she couldn't accept death. She spent weeks praying, begging, looking for help, until a monk from the mountains told her she could still bring him back. A knot formed in my throat. A monk? From where? From the mountains? She repeated. He claimed he could speak with the spirits of those who died without saying goodbye. He told her the boy's soul hadn't fully left, that it could be brought back. They did something, a ceremony. I begged her not to, but she was desperate. They lit candles, used her blood, soil from the cemetery, and a piece of his baby blanket. The old woman's voice began to shake. And he came back, doctor? What do you mean, came back? He breathed, opened his eyes, cried. But he wasn't the same. Since then, he doesn't grow, doesn't bleed, doesn't get sick. He doesn't feel cold or heat. He just exists. She looked at me with a mix of fear and surrender. I know he shouldn't be here. The living aren't meant to care for those who no longer belong to this side. I swallowed hard. It was absurd, impossible. I thought she was delusional, her mind broken by grief and guilt. But something in her tone, in the way her eyes filled with tears when she spoke, made me hesitate. Where is your daughter now? I asked. She died 2 months after bringing him back, she whispered. And since then, he only appears when someone in the village is about to die. As if he's looking for something. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. But when I returned to the ER, the boy was no longer on the bed where I'd left him. I found him sitting on another gurney, legs dangling, swinging gently like any normal child would. No cables. No oxygen, no bandages. He just looked at me and smiled, waiting almost patiently. Where's your grandmother? I asked. He looked up at the ceiling, distracted. She left, he said calmly. She always leaves when the lights come. I didn't understand what he meant by the lights, but right then, the lamps in the hallway began to flicker, one after another until for a split second, the entire ward went dark, and when the lights came back on, the boy was gone. I tried to stay rational. I was a doctor. There had to be a biological explanation. I decided to take a direct cardiac blood sample, a puncture straight into the heart. But when I inserted the needle, nothing came out, not a drop. On the monitor, the heart rhythm still flashed steadily. But inside the body, there was nothing to circulate. I called the attending physician on duty and told him everything. He looked at me, half concerned, half amused. Take a break, Milas, he said. You're exhausted. No child survives without blood. When we returned to the trauma bay together, the boy was gone. The bed was empty. The monitor turned off. The sheet neatly folded. We activated an internal search. Security, nurses, surveillance cameras, and that's when I saw it. On the hallway footage, 2:57 a.m., the boy was walking barefoot toward the hospital exit. No one seemed to notice him. The thermal camera showed no body heat, only his silhouette sharp and perfectly clear, and behind him a few meters back there was another shape, taller, thinner, elongated. No face. Just a translucent shadow following him quietly. At exactly 3 a.m., both figures disappeared from the frame, without ever opening the door. Days later, the police found an old bicycle near the same rural road where he had been hit. On the ground, a makeshift wooden cross, surrounded by dried flowers. The small plaque read, "To our little Samuel, 8 years old. We'll never forget you." The date on the cross was from the year before. I tried to move on, but the hospital's electronic system wouldn't let me. Every week, at the same exact time, it generated an automatic alert. Pediatric patient, unidentified, admitted to Trauma Bay 2. No one could open the file. In the clinical notes, a single line appeared. The boy does not bleed. A month later, just when I'd convinced myself it was all a product of exhaustion, a nightmare misfiled in my memory. A new nurse called for help with an admission. It was late, another endless night shift. The hospital was silent, but not empty. That strange breathing silence that seems alive between the walls. "Doctor," she said, leaning through the ER doorway, "can you check this child?" "He says you've treated him before." I turned. Casually at first, but the moment I saw him, my heart stopped. It was him, same clothes, a faded yellow t-shirt, dirt-stained shorts, worn sneakers with no laces, and that same expression still, deep, unblinking, yet peaceful, in a way that didn't belong to this world. The air grew heavy. For a second, the sounds of ventilators and monitors seemed to vanish. "Samuel," I whispered, not sure if I said it out loud or just in my mind. This time, he was holding something in his hands, a crumpled, yellowed piece of paper, as if it had been folded and kept for years. "What do you have there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He lowered his eyes and unfolded it carefully, as though handling something fragile. It was a medical prescription, signed by me, in my handwriting. The ink was smudged, but still legible. "Samuel R. Final medical discharge. Must not return." I stared at it, unable to process what I was seeing. The paper had that brittle, aged texture, not from this year, not even close. But the stamp, the signature, the date, all were mine. "Who gave you this?" I managed to ask. He looked up at me. His eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something like relief. "You did, Doctor," he said softly. "The night I died." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. I leaned against the nearest gurney, my brain searching desperately for logic, a cruel prank, a data error, a coincidence. But he was still standing there watching me, as if waiting for me to remember something I'd chosen to forget. I said nothing. He smiled. Not a child's smile, but a calm, accepting one. The kind you see in someone who finally understands their fate. "It doesn't hurt this time," he said. "I can go now." Before I could answer, he lowered his head and exhaled softly. And right in front of me, no screams, no flashes, no supernatural theatrics, he simply collapsed. The monitor beside him was never connected, yet I instinctively reached to check his pulse, to start compressions, to do something. But when I touched his neck, his skin was cold, stiff, and then I blinked, and he was gone. Only the piece of paper remained, folded neatly, resting on the empty gurney, my own signature trembling faintly in the breeze from the air vent. I called the nurse. She swore she hadn't seen any child, said the pediatric admission had come as an automatic system alert, no name, no file number. When we checked the database, there was no record. Only a temporary file, created and deleted in the same second. The case was officially closed as data error, and over time, the hospital forgot. Or at least that's what everyone claimed, but if you search carefully in the system, you can still find his name listed among active patients. Age, 8 years. Diagnosis, multiple trauma without bleeding. Status, pending final discharge. Months passed. Some colleagues said that around 3 a.m., the lights in Trauma Bay 2 flickered for no reason. Others swore they heard the faint squeak of a bicycle rolling down the hall, a metallic scrape against the polished floor. I never wanted to find out. But one night, as I was signing off reports, I heard it myself, the rattle of an old chain, the gentle bump of a tire hitting the wall, and then a distant fading sound of a child's laughter. I stood up, but I couldn't make myself walk toward the sound. Sometimes I wonder if Samuel just wanted someone to let him go. If all this time he wasn't a ghost, but a lost child caught between two worlds, waiting for the one who brought him back to finally set him free. Or maybe he came back only to remind me that not every heartbeat should be saved, because every time the clock strikes 3, the soft beeping of the monitors seems to slow deeper, heavier. And in my mind, I hear that small voice again. It doesn't hurt this time, so I keep my eyes off the monitor. I don't want to see that green line appear again, showing 78 beats per minute, from a heart that should no longer be beating. If this story sent chills down your spine or made you question what lies beyond life, don't forget to leave a like. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the line between science and the unexplained grows thinner with every shift. And tell me in the comments, what do you think Samuel really was? A memory, a spirit, or something I should have never tried to bring back? See you on the next shift. Until then, stay awake.